Hello, and welcome to Enlightened Empaths, your community for the spiritually awakened, where we discuss, explore, and connect with fellow empaths, healers, intuitives, and seekers. Hello, empaths. Today, we're going to talk about how you can activate your spiritual path with our guest, Oliver. He's reached out over to 2 million students and counseled celebrities such as Gwyneth Paltrow, Demi Moore, and Donna Karan, and so many others on his mission to teach others how to clear, protect, and unblock their energy so they can attract more abundance, love, and purpose in their lives. He's created the Geo Love Healing Methodology, working with the entire energetic system straight to the root, and coming out in 2023 with Hay House. Welcome so much to the show, Oliver. I wanted to start, you have a beautiful website and you explain a bit on there about your story. Can you start there with this kind of life-changing reading you had?
Yeah, I mean it was super interesting because I never thought healing would be I would be an energy healer, and before I stepped into this, I was pretty successful as an internet entrepreneur already, right? So it's kind of like the reverse path. A lot of people become healers and they want to, you want to make a living from it. I was already pretty set, and then this came into my life, and I remember my very first a reading in energy clearing, and I was super skeptical because I'm predominantly left brain, and someone told me you've got energy blocks, right? And then I proceeded to having them removed, and the whole time I was so skeptical because energy was so new to me. It wasn't trendy back then, and I knew nothing about it. And then fast forward after that healing, I made more in a day than I did an entire year because of it. And I was like, wow, that is crazy. And ever since then, that was kind of like my the dangling carrot that was put in front of me. And ever since then, I've just been pretty much all in and really mastering and learning all that I could about energy and spiritual gifts and how it affects our day-to-day lives.
Wow, that is fantastic.
And what I love about that is when we come into this work with a little bit of skepticism or a little bit of reserve, it feels like it, in some weird sort of way, it opens up the gates even wider when it really does click in, but it also gives you more validity and credibility with what you're offering. It's not just woo, airy fairy woo woo. It's actually, there's a meaning. And you've talked a lot about how you stepped onto this path, but what do you feel like your work is you call yourself the spiritual activator. My take on that is that you want to empower people to find that in themselves. Is that your premise?
Yeah, so pretty much like I look at all the problems in society, right? And I think it could all be solved, or we wouldn't even be created in the first place if we as kids never turned off our light, right? If we stepped into our fullness of what we came here with, and our spiritual gifts are on, and we're empowered, then we would think differently. We would vibrate differently. Therefore, we would attract different things in our lives. And the whole detour of and I've seen it happen so many times with people who have been blessed to help, to where they turned their gifts off when they were a child for whatever reason it is. Maybe is they didn't want to be rejected, or didn't want to lose love and connection. Maybe it was a fear of unknown. Maybe the gifts were too intense and nobody told them how to use them, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's too scary, and they shut it off. But you can't really fully shut it off. I mean, it's still there, but they shut it off, and because of that, they go through the dark night of the soul kind of path, to where they attract toxic people, and they experience unnecessary suffering because their intuition isn't turned on, right? It's not on point. It's not accessible. And then they come into, the mid part of their lives, and they're like, you know what? This isn't working. And then they have this awakening to where they're like, I'm going to step into my light, discover who I am. And a lot of it is a journey to returning back to how we came here as and what we had. So, and so for me, if I can get people there and empower them, and get them to shine their light and have the direct connection to, their higher power, then the world will be a different place. So for me, that is the goal: is one, getting people to turn their lights on again, and really embrace all that they are. And second is figuring out, hey, how do we make it so that kids don't have to turn their lights off in the first place, which solves a lot of things as well.
Solves everything. I would love to see something like this added to the curriculum. Can you imagine? They are starting to teach children how to meditate
Mm.
in the curriculum in the States anyway. And I just think that is fantastic. Can you tell us how you see energy in people? You write a lot about sacred geometry. Are you actually seeing this with your physical eyes, or is it with your spiritual inner eye?
I have with all of the above. I mean, I look at it as people have primary ways they interpret energy, right? So yeah, I have been able to see, sacred geometry shapes and spirals with my own eye, and I thought I was going nuts to, like, everybody around me there. I was like, can you guys see that? And they saw the exact same thing. And we had over a dozen people seeing the exact same thing. So I'm like, okay, it's just not my eyes, right? So I've had it that way. But for me, my primary way is just knowing. Because people sometimes just know stuff, right? They just don't know how they know, but they know. And some people are more feelers. It's like their body is communicating with them, and they feel heavy, they feel light, they feel it through their bodies. And for some, they're actually they're seers, so they see things. Like my wife sees energy, sees the other realms, sees other dimensions, and I just feel it and know it, right? So people have different ways of interpreting energy, and I think that's why it's so cool when people work together, because you have more resources. Somebody can see, somebody can feel, somebody can hear, somebody can know, and with all of that, you just have more information than you would if you just relied on your own. But I'm more of a knower and feeler.
So one of the things that I love about your work is that you actually have a 5-step energy program that helps people release that detox energy. And I'd never really heard it referred to in that way before. As far as Samantha and I have talked with a lot of folks and with each other and with our own work about how energy will get trapped in your body. It will manifest in a negative way with either illness or emotional blocks or whatever. What would be a stepping stone, or what would be some of those steps people could take to release that toxicity of energy that might be trapped in their body?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, like the way I look at it is like we are affected by energy all the time, right? And if it's unaddressed and they stay long enough, they become energetic blocks, right? So there's four of them. I mean, one is an environment, and your environment can affect you more than you know. And that could, for some people, that's the biggest source of their blocks. That's why they're not experiencing love or abundance or joy, right? They can, and if you're easily affected by your environment, is when you step into a crowded area, a mall, a store, an airport. Like, are you thrown off and overwhelmed like I am or I was? Or do you feel free or hate? So that's the first thing, is like empaths is like it's figuring out how the environment affects you. But it's not just like, when I say environment, it's just not the physical environment, because sometimes it's also all remotely. I mean, how many times have you had it where someone's thinking of you, you're thinking of somebody, and they call you, you text them, and they're like, whoa, how random is that, right? So there's that. So environment can affect, yes. For some, it is events in their life, things that happen earlier on that affect them energetically. For some, it's gestational, things that happen when they were in the womb that affect them. And for some, it's generational, it's passed on, and like their dad and their grandfather, it's just or their mom and their grandma, it's just a passed on, and it seems like it's the same story every single generation. And now you're reliving the energetic pattern. It can end with you, but at the beginning, it just feels like it's yours because the effects are so real. So for me, it's like, one is realizing that these are very real energetic blocks, and you don't really need to know where they come from, as long as you're able to release it. Because when those are released, a lot of times I met people, that's the only thing stopping them from what they want, is they figure out the energy block, and once they release it, it's like driving without the emergency brakes on. You just go way fast to where you want, right? So for me, that's kind of like the intention is, first, let me help people, teach them or do it for them how to release their energetic blocks, and second is how do they raise their vibration so that they're experiencing life at just a whole new different level, of beauty and whatever the life has to offer.
If some of these energy blocks are generational, like you were saying, or if they're just really embedded, like we're talking about a very traumatic PTSD event, for example, would that take more energy to clear and cleanse it? Or is it all the same principle applied to any energy block?
Typically, when I'm working with somebody, and it's interesting, when I first started this, I was predominantly super logical and in my head. And healings still happen, because when you're doing healings, in my experience, it comes from a different place. It comes from your higher power, your divine story. So even though you're super skeptical as you're doing the healing, if you're open and the intention is there, it's great. So at the beginning, when I was doing healings on people, um, it the first ones were always the toughest ones, because when I'm doing it, I'm sending the intention of whatever is the biggest block that is stopping somebody. I want to remove it. And when I did that in the past, people would go through purging experiences, whether that's physically, emotionally, and it would last for a week or two, and then their lives would be amazing afterwards. And because when I'm removing that energy, it's not just energy. Energy is attached to, thoughts, beliefs, emotional patterns, people, opportunities, and entire reality. So when that's removed and replaced with something new, all of those quickly just kind of find themselves out, right? Or you redefine your relationship with all of them. So it can be pretty jarring for a lot. But as I grew more and kind of stepped into embodying more love in what I do and who I am, then all of a sudden I've noticed that my healings are gentler. People would still get the results, but the purges are not as intense as it used to be. It's just a smoother experience, if you will.
Almost like you were being healed as you were helping heal others.
Oh yeah, and that's the beauty of it. It's the gift. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Because as you're healing others, you got to remember, like, that energy that's healing them is running through you, right? So as it runs through you, it does what it needs to do. So the more you heal, or let that energy run through you to heal others, the more it actually lifts you up along the way. So it's a win-win.
It really is. Now, you've stayed in the background for a long time, haven't you? You haven't really advertised what you do or promoted it all. Why that choice, and why coming out with all of this now?
I was afraid to be seen, to be honest. I mean, I was, my human story, I had a lot of shame revolving around. I had a lot of businesses that failed and went under, like, and I took it really, really hard. So I thought to myself, like, you know what, I'm not worthy to be seen. I cause a lot of pain to people, like, so I'm just gonna work and help people behind the scenes, because, like, let me just see how this goes. So I did that for the longest time, and I actually helped my wife build her business, and did really, really well. And when we became pregnant with my son, who's 3 now, I remember something clicked in me, because for me, family and children always move the needle for me, as far as it motivates me. It just, I won't do it for myself, but I'll do it for them, kind of thing, right? And I remember thinking to myself, after, being blessed to help a lot of people, I realized, a lot of stuff could be prevented if they had a good environment growing up. And I just realized, this is a brand new soul, and I am their role model. And I don't want to ever, be a cause of why they have something to heal down the road. So I have a choice whether or not I'm going to step fully in my light before he's born, or I'm going to keep hiding. And I knew what hiding did to the soul. So for me, it motivated me to, like, you know what? I'm just going to put myself out there, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to go all in. And it doesn't matter if I've got guilt and shame and fear and inadequacies and issues of worthiness to be seen. I'm going to do it because, one, at that time I was like, I have to, and it's needed. It's time. I've been putting it off for close to 15 years at that point. If it's not now, then when, kind of thing,
That's a beautiful story. And children are the best motivator, aren't they? I think it's maybe it was Roseanne Barr on some sitcom. She used to always say, look, kids, you have your choice. You can have a therapy fund or a college fund. And I just always love that idea that at some point as parents, we might mess up a little bit, but you have such a positive approach of going into it. Like, no, I'm going to create this beautiful, healed and healing, loving environment for my kids and demonstrate it through this work. I love that story.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't easy at the beginning, and what fueled me was like all that regret and fear that I'm gonna make a mistake and all stuff. But as you grow, then the fuels change to where you're like, oh wow, I want to make a difference. I want to feel more fulfilled. I want to experience more love and joy, right? I want to give more, and the fuel changes, and you kind of get used to it changing, but it does, as you evolve.
So what I love about what you said, I'm going to backtrack a little bit to when you were talking about generational patterns, and something that's really huge right now for so many in the spiritual community and in general is, releasing trauma, but also breaking ancestral patterns. And on an energetic level, whatever work we're doing, and I feel like so many of us are being called to say, it ends with me. It's been passed down, it's been passed down. And that sends that healing back, but it also sends it forward. And I think so many of us are being asked to step in as a catalyst right now and say, you know what, we're here for this transition. We're here to help build more unity. And what your work seems to be really focused on is helping people find their individuality, but become more a part of the collective in this healing that needs to happen.
I mean, because I feel like us as individuals, there's so much richness in who we are. And we've got a message to share. We have gifts that came. We've got things that, that can flow through us that we're here to share, right? But the human story and the human experience gets in the way to where a lot of people never get there. But we have a unique thing that's just that we're here to do. And if we do that individually, there's a ripple effect. It affects so many more people than you would think. But if we do it as a collective, then everything can change, right? And for case in point, if you look at history and you look at people that made a huge difference in the world, whether it's religious or movements, it took one being in their full potent light, shining it and sharing their message to affect billions of people long after they passed, right? That's one. But so we also have one, that opportunity, and two, there's strength in numbers. So if we do it as a collective, then light wakes up light, and there comes a time to where the world's illuminated, and darkness ceases to exist because we have found and discovered and returned to our nature of love and light. So for me, that definitely is the the intention for sure.
You have a lot of little video clips and interesting information on meditation and how it's not really for everyone, which is something surprising. A lot of spiritual teachers would be like, wait, what? So can you explain your view on that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the way I look at it is we live in a society where it's almost like people are trying to fit in a box that's not made for them, right? And that's been the case. I remember when I was first starting off with business, I was, you have all these conflicting things. You got to be an early riser, 6 a.m., to succeed. And some people were like, you've got to wake up whenever you want, right? You've got the 80-hour work week and get a 4-hour work week. And then if you look at people like, that were into just building one business, like Bill Gates from Microsoft, one business. And then you have people like Richard Branson, who's built 300 different businesses successfully, right? And at the beginning, I thought I just had to be one. I got to be like, oh, if I want to be successful, I got to do it like Bill did and focus on one thing. But it's impossible since I'm wired for variety. I love new things. I love creating. And for the longest time, it caused unnecessary suffering because I thought I needed to be one way in order to succeed. And then I realized, you know what? There's another person who did it this way, and they've succeeded. And now I'm like, all right, there's more than one way to do it. So when it comes to meditation, people think you got to be quiet for 30 minutes or 2 hours, and you don't have to have any thoughts, right? And that is like, that's, for some, it's very hard to do that, right? Just to have no thoughts is like telling your heart to stop beating. We just sometimes when you tell your mind not to think, it's gonna think, right? So what I do is I ask people, why do you want to meditate? What do you want to get out of it? People are like, I want to relax. I want to let go of stuff. I want to access higher information, higher consciousness. I want to feel invigorated, or I want to just be in a place to where it's my sacred place, right? Or I want to release all these things that I've absorbed throughout the day, right? And if meditation works for you, I say go for it 100%. But the reality is there's more than one way to get to the desired outcome. I see people, their meditation is walking or gardening or painting or playing the piano or dancing or doing yoga or journaling or spending time with their kids, right? Or some of them it is when they're in solitude. For me, it's like, working out, or taking a salt bath, or like, serving people. When I'm serving people, I get rejuvenated. I get messages. I feel calm. I feel clear. Things, my human story falls away, and I'm recharged, right? So from my experience, is just remove, like, the expectations of how it has to look. It's like saying, look, what kind of car is the right car? The car that's right for you, right? It is. So meditation, the way we know it, is a vehicle to get you to an outcome, to a state, to access consciousness and a frequency. And you can choose whatever vehicle, whether it's a bike, whether you want to run, whether you want to fly, whether you want to be on a boat, whether you want the variety of different vehicles available to you. Choose one that works for you, that you like, that you can actually, one, not only live with, but it's sustainable long run. It aligns with your nature. It's not hard to do. You don't feel friction doing it. It just feels very natural, and do it, right? And because when you do it that way, the guilt goes away of trying to fit in, the frustration goes away, and you just get the results of why you wanted to do it in the first place.
I love that, because it's also one of my main premises my entire life has been to empower, not enable. And I feel like what you're talking about is you're helping people connect with that divine light source, that divine that we all have access to. It has nothing to do with a bank account, a location, an ethnicity. It all comes back to our inalienable rights as a human being, in this species, to be connected with that. And my own limited perspective on this is the light is getting lighter, and the dark is getting darker, and the more of us that can unite and raise this up. And I feel like that's what you're talking about, is get rid of the old stuff, release what was never yours to own to begin with, and find it within yourself that you are safe enough to connect to this. You are and worthy is kind of an overused word, but I feel like that's what you're giving people, is that self-worth. So all of that aside, you mentioned that you had some challenges earlier in life on getting onto this path. Are you making very conscious choices parenting your children that to break that cyclical pattern? Because these little people that are here now they are wide open light. They are amazing. And I know in my soul they're here for this. It's for where we're going next. So how can people that are listening, who are awakening, help these little folks or their children or this next generation realize this is the normal that we want?
Got it. So yeah, I mean, we just live what we preach, because I feel like environment of a child is so important. And I can talk till my face is blue, but if I'm not embodying it, it doesn't mean anything, right? So for me, it is like, we live like, in a constant state of just divine surrender, right? And it's divine surrender. We go with the flow when we're divinely guided. We look for signs. When we're divinely guided, we take action. Like, we embody love in all that we do. We do things for the highest good of all. And for us, like, it's just things like that, and not saving. If my child's in pain, I'm gonna love them. I'm gonna create the space, how difficult it is, and I'm gonna think in the long term instead of just giving them instant gratification. I'm gonna think of cause and effect, and who would they be if I save them here, and would they have the tools when I'm not around to save them? So I think in those terms of, like, yeah, it's easy to do it now, instant gratification, and that's how I was raised. But if I just step back and love them and give them the tools to deal with life, and pretty much for me, the way I look at it is, when my kids are still living with me, that's the best time to practice all of these things. So yes, bring on the challenges and the obstacles, and let me see and guide you and love you on how you can handle them, and help you pivot when you need to, so that when you're out and about in the real world and mom and dad aren't there to give you the answers, like, you can revert back to your upbringing, your core values, what you've learned through experience, and from that, I feel like that's the best gift I could ever give, my child. And I think the number one thing is, like, really doing things with love, and making sure that they don't turn off their light and their gifts, and that they're supported. And I'm not trying to mold them based on what I think or who I think they should be, but I'm discovering who they innately are, loving them for it, encouraging them to step into that, use their voice, and then give them the principles that I've learned energy wise or manifesting wise, and really just surrender to the outcome of their own journey, you know?
Yeah, it's like the old adage, what is it? Kids do what their parents do, not what they say.
You're
So
right.
we are their best first example. In terms of empaths or highly sensitive people, is the energy more porous? Is it more open? Why do they tend to attract more of this negative energy? And what are some tips you have in your upcoming book on how to protect ourselves from that?
It really depends. I've realized there's a lot of different reasons why people are sensitive or more in tune with energy. It could be they have an overactive third eye. It's just overactive, right? And typically that's not an issue if your vibration is high. Because ultimately, yeah, when I first started out, sure, I was doing protection and doing all these different things for like, months and months at a time. But it comes to a point that even that in itself isn't sustainable, because when you're vibrating of I need to protect myself, that in itself is a vibration, right? So you do that at the beginning because it works and it's way better than you absorbing everything and anything everywhere you go. So when you do that for 30 or 90 days, what ends up happening is your energy, and when as it is your authentic energy, and when it's being affected by outside sources, and the difference, right? So you can just be like, okay, I know what it feels like to be clear. But eventually, as you remove the blocks and you do the work and you raise your vibration becomes your protection. It's kind of like I talk about it all the time. It's the metaphor of if somebody's running or biking and somebody wanted to hurt them, somebody can throw a stone, it would hit them, it would affect them, right? Because they're in the same playing field. But if that same person was on a plane and that plane took off, it reaches a certain altitude to where it doesn't matter if that person is the strongest person in the world. They're going to throw out a rock, it's not even going to hit, right? And the person on the plane won't even know a rock tried to hit him. And then it goes even higher to where you go to another altitude, another elevation, where that person below doesn't even see the person above, and vice versa, right? So there's no need for protection, because the ones that are going to cause pain, they're not even in your reality. So ultimately, yes, your vibration becomes your protection. But at the very beginning, it is, it could be, you're in a vibration to where all that's available and your third eye is really, really open. It could be that you have denied or ran away or rejected your gifts, and those gifts are there to help really balance out all that stuff that you're absorbing. But since you're afraid of it, you're running away from it, you really can't go in there and nourish the soul and clear your energetic field. Therefore, you're only experiencing the negative stuff perceivably, right? It can be that. And the solution, really, what I tell people is it's simple. You just have to look to see what you love doing as a kid. We all have things that we love doing as a kids, and whether it's people called you a water baby because you love being in water, or you love running barefoot, or you love dancing, or you love having connecting with friends, or you love building a fort, or you love being by yourself, or you loved animals. There's some patterns of what you were passionate about that you loved doing as a kid that we all have. And the cool thing about that is by doing those, it naturally clears your energy that you absorb, right? And that's a big step for some, is like doing that. But then again, those things in society are labeled self-care, and people have this connotation of like, oof, I don't want to do self-care, it's selfish, or I'll do it when I'm drained, versus thinking of that as that's self-care, but let's reframe this a little bit. That's oxygen for your soul. When you do that, you can clear and release all the things that don't serve you, so you can be in your authentic essence and energy. And when you're there and you're centered, then you experience life in a whole new different way.
I absolutely love that because it's clear, it's concise, and it's usable information. It's not. So that's my next question is for many, they have a support team, they know about self-care, but what would be, and I know meditation, time in nature, make sure you're hydrated, all the basic care things we do. But for many of our listeners, they may not have a support team. They may not have people who understand how sensitive they are, and they feel kind of isolated. What would be a personal thing that person could do that would help them feel more of this connection that you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, when I moved, I grew up in the Philippines for 18 years, and when I moved here, the advice that I got from the books was like, you're an average of the 5 closest friends that you have. But I was like, I don't have any friends. Like, and I'm new here. How can I do that? So what I did was, books became my friends. Things I listened to became my friends. What I was exposed to became, my environment. Because the thing is, yeah, people come to me all the time. It's like, hey, Oliver, you tell me environment is everything. But I live in a household and the person living with me or I'm at work, I can't change it now, but it's toxic. And I'm like, all right, then you've got to create other environments so that if your toxic environment is 100% of your life because that's all you have, then you've got to start branching out with who you listen to, what you experience, and make that a bigger part of your life. So whatever is toxic becomes smaller. Next thing you know, especially when you're bringing in light, little goes a long way. You'll never know what really moves the needle in getting you to the life, the vibration, the emotions, the experience that you want. So for me, it's like environment and what you lend your consciousness to, your attention to, is everything. And if you're part of groups that want to grow and you're reading books and you're listening to podcasts like the one that you guys are listening on right now, which really feeds the soul and really feeds you a lot of light and positivity, then do that and make the light and positivity in your life louder environment-wise. Make it louder. Because the darkness at first, it's there, right? And the only way to shut it out is bring more light in, right? So change what you focus on, what you're exposed to, what you lend your attention and consciousness to, and everything starts to change.
So the whole idea, so in mediumship, the whole thing is if for every step you take forward, spirit is going to take 2. So I feel like you're saying the same thing. Any little incremental change that you can make that puts you in a place of gratitude and joy. And I love that you talked about needing to protect yourself, but then sometimes that can become such a thick wall that it doesn't allow the other things to permeate through. So your message feels like it's get stronger with yourself, your connection with divine, and then you can allow that to come closer. Yeah, which is beautiful.
Protecting yourself to give you time to strengthen yourself to where you don't need protection. And a lot of people get lost in just protecting yourself phase and they get stuck in there. And I was certainly one of them. But once you are able to do that long enough so you can build, yourself, then it gets to a point where you don't need it because you're different. It's like people going to the gym, and the first few times you go to the gym, you get sore, right? And you're lifting a certain, weight and you're doing certain exercises and then you're sore, but that soreness isn't permanent. You go to sleep, your body grows and it heals. Next thing you're no longer sore. You do the same thing and it no longer causes you pain because your body has grown enough and adapted to where it doesn't. And the same thing with our spirit, with our soul, with our energy is when you have worked on yourself enough, the things that used to bother you, the big things become really, really small. Really, really small to where they don't phase you as much or anymore or at all, or they don't even show up in your reality. So yeah, in my experience, first is like you take a step, spirit takes 2. But if you keep doing that, it ends up being like a little bit more of a flywheel effect to where you take 1, spirit takes 10, 100, 1,000. It gets faster and bigger the more you surrender and the higher your vibration is.
Yeah, I like the way you emphasize that we're in control of our energy and we are in control of our vibration with the choices we make. I think sometimes people forget that but that's really, really important. Tell us about your new book coming out and a little bit about your process in writing it. Did you feel that some of it was channeled, or was it just kind of more an instructive piece of work for you?
It was so interesting. So it's with Hay House, and the book, my intention, because not everybody can do our 30-day programs or see us live in a retreat center, like, where we get to hug people. I mean, not everybody can do that. So I wanted to condense the best of the best, everything I knew from close to 20 years of doing this in a book. So when somebody read it, they would have all the tools to turn their light on, be free from just energetic drainage from people and step into their light. So I wanted to do that in a book. So for me, it was an exciting experience. I worked with a collaborator who interviewed me, right, along the way. And I loved it because she was asking questions that I forgotten and I even knew. Because when you're so into the path and you're far along, and I've been doing this for close to 20 years, you're not the same person. Therefore, you speak a different language from the people who are going to pick up the book and read it for the first time, because they're in a very different place. And I have forgotten how and what that place feels like and looks like, right? It's almost like a past life, multiple past lives. So it was great to have somebody, who would interview me, and I would share everything, channeled as potent as I could. And she would ask me, like, what about this? What about that? And I'm like, I've never thought of that in a long time. And it makes it to where I feel like the book can speak to somebody, whether they're a complete beginner or whether or not they're extremely advanced, because I wanted to make sure it was potent and I'm reaching as many different souls as I can. But it was a fun experience, and one that I'm like, wow, this is amazing how it just turned out. Where it's like I try to jam pack it with so much information to where I'm like, hey, there's a buffet of techniques and things that people can do. And it doesn't matter if only one or two work for you. Go with the one that works for you, run with it, and your life will never be the same. So for me, it's just a compilation of things that not only work with me, because the way I do it is it works for me. And when it does, I share it with my close friends and family. And when it does, I go ahead and share it with my clients. When it does, I go ahead and share it with the healers that I certify. And when I do that and it works, and I get the feedback that it works, then I share it with everybody else. So it's got to go through these different levels of experimentation and being rolled out to a lot of people. And once it's a unanimous thing, then it becomes something that I teach pretty much everybody. So this book is filled with stuff that just works, that's been tested through time and by a lot of different people.
Well, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It reaches everyone. You're not just talking to the spiritually elite. You're not just talking to people that have their yoga and their green juice and this is my lifestyle. You're talking to anyone on the path. And when you were talking about having to remember, I think that gives you a beautiful level of empathy, compassion, and understanding to do this work, because you have the muscle memory in the background to say, I remember when I was that person coming into this country with, I didn't have my 5 friends, and I was on a much different path. And that's the key, I think, when you're talking about connecting with your own divinity, your own connection with spirit, is every one of us has something that we can add to that. And so people can actually come and do retreats at your center?
Right now, it's closed to the public. It is retreats. We fill it up with just our own retreats every single year. But that's changing to where, because we have a lot of sacred structures in the land. We're building, we're building a 111-foot pyramid that can have 800 people in it, right? One of my dear friends built the one in Burning Man. I've never been, but he's been there and he built the big one. And I'm like, I want a permanent structure here, just as big. You can do sound healings, you can do lectures, right? It's permanent and it's the exact proportions of the one in Egypt. Great. So we got that, geodesic domes that are being built. And my goal is to open it up to people that want to go here for a day and experience the land, but also thought leaders who are on the same mission of bringing more light into the world and opening this up as a space for when people are here, people can feel the energy potently.
That is beautiful, because I think for so many of us that are empathic, sensitives, whatever label you want to put on that connection with the earth energy is vital right now in order to be able to do the work we all came here to do. We have to reconnect with with our home base, literally and figuratively, in a part of the country here in the States that is absolutely stunning for that energetic blueprint, that people can feel that energy and retap and refill their own well from that, as well as so from below and above.
Exactly.
That's incredible. Thank you.
I want to sit in the pyramid.
Yeah, you guys are welcome at any of our events, or if you just want to spend, a few days or the weekend here and just experience the land. And we even have, I forgot, we have labyrinths here. We have the, I built the, it's the first heart labyrinth. It's 40 feet, it's just 40 feet in size, and you can see it when you're flying. It's just, and people love it. So you guys are welcome anytime.
Wow, that is really, really neat. I've sat in like copper pyramids, but never like an actual full to scale pyramid building. That is fantastic. So tell everyone how they can find you and reach with you and connect with you.
Yeah, social media. I mean, I put all my best stuff in there. Like, I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. If you guys search at Spiritual Activator, I've got like hundreds and hundreds of hours of free content with techniques people can use, and just follow me there and see if my stuff resonates. But I put all my best stuff there because I want, my goal is to reach more people and impact them. So I put all the best of the best free for people to experience on social media.
Yeah, it's all out there. And I love the way you keep it like very quick and concise and to the point and just very useful for the watcher. So we'll post some of those links up on our social media pages too. But anyone who wants to, just search Spiritual Activator and definitely Oliver will come up for sure.
Yeah, and also the book right now, at least at the time of this recording, is on Amazon. So if people put in Spiritual Activator and Hay House, like it should pop up there for pre-order. So.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, we'll do that too. We'll put it in the show notes and on our pages. Thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoy getting to talk to you.
Thanks for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, it's your message and your energy is beautiful. So thank you very much for sharing that with all of us.
Thank you.
100%. And thank you everyone for listening. Please remember, as always, to show up, do great work, and share your light.
Take care.